I'm going to be turning this regular Game Boy Advance SP into an awesome mini arcade machine. I first got the idea after looking at my mini Dig Dug arcade machine next to one of my Game Boys. With a little bit of research, I found out this isn't the first time this idea has been out there. A few variations have been made, but I decided to make my own design where it's completely enclosed yet easily to disassemble with screws while being able to insert and remove and play any Game Boy games. First step, of course, was to take apart the Game Boy. Then I looked for ideas online for the main design since I wanted the tall OG classic cabinet look. The materials I used for this was an original AGS 101 motherboard, screen, some craft wood, a couple of broken SP parts, plus aftermarket shells, and a blank Raspberry Pi board. Next, I started to cut the blank board as well as some of the shells to fit into the design since I placed the start and select buttons on the front rather than on top with the rest. After the initial cuts, I designed the sides on Adobe Illustrator. I printed it and cut it out, did a test fit, then traced and cut the two pieces on wood. Once the main body for the cabinet started to take shape, it was time to cut the rest of the wooden pieces, then glue everything together using some wood glue. I also decided to move the speaker from its original place to the top above the screen. I used two Nintendo Switch speakers instead of one, so it required drilling some holes as well as adding a couple of clips to hold the speakers in place once installed. The next step was very important since I had to carefully measure and drill out holes for screws on the front and back wooden pieces going through the side edges of the cabinet. To pull this off, I had to use the tiniest nuts and screws I found at my local hardware store. I also made opening cuts for the cartridge slot on the bottom front, 2 holes on the back for the trigger buttons, and a few more cuts for the charging port, a power switch, and a volume wheel. The cabinet itself was all done now. Next step was to spray paint it black, followed with a clear coat. While the paint was drying, I moved on to adding tactile switches to the Raspberry Pi board and removing components from the main SP board. I then made my own joystick using a mini screwdriver and a wooden bead. I used another broken donor board to cut out and remove the LEDs. Since I used different separate circuit boards, 2 for buttons and 1 for the actual SP motherboard, I had to add LEDs to the button board on top since that one does not include a spot for LEDs. So everything was mostly finished now. It was time to start assembling and soldering everything together. Things that needed to be soldered with wire were all buttons, top speakers, LEDs, power switch, and volume slider. After finished assembly, it needed a final touch of adding decals with designs. I decided to go with one of my favorite retro arcade machine designs, Centipede. I used Photoshop to resize the main design to fit the cabinet shape, then printed it out on printable vinyl. Then I cut all pieces and applied them onto the mini arcade machine. I also added the Atari logo with regular permanent vinyl. And now for the cherry on top, the Nintendo logo. I don't think I'll get sued by Nintendo or anything. I mean, I'm not planning to mass produce and sell these, but anyways. So I thought I was completely finished by now, but unfortunately I ran into a problem. The Game Boy wasn't working properly, since the brightness setting was inverted by starting on full brightness when powered on, and when the button was pressed it triggered the red low battery LED. I traced the problem back to the screen ribbon cable, which wasn't going to work, so I had to order a different one from Amazon. I also needed a ribbon cable ZIF connector adapter since the new one didn't have one. I did not feel like waiting a couple of months to order one from China, so I built and soldered my own adapter using parts I already had. After I was done, I tested the new ribbon cable and adapter, confirming it worked. I put it back together and was finally completely finished. Alright, now it's time to turn it on and test it out. I'll be using Easy Flash with the button tester to test for functionality. That is awesome. It is totally working. I'll be testing out the buttons, up, down, left, right, A, B, left and right trigger, plus start and select. They all work fine. Then it only made sense to test out gameplay with an actual Game Boy Advance Centipede game. Volume slider works. And it charges just fine as well. I'm also so glad I added screws to be able to disassemble it. I mean, imagine if it was all glued together, I tried to turn it on and was like, yeah, that would have been bad. Next, I tested a handful of different GBA games as well as a DMG game, even though they stick out, but no big deal. I also tested it with the WarioWare Twisted game, but makes the whole thing pretty uneven. It does work pretty well though, but after a little while I felt like I was just playing with it like a toy airplane. Alright, I'm having too much fun with this. Now, I'm not 100% done yet. There are a couple of things I want to add in the near future, like a Mako battery, maybe an IPS screen, and a USB-C type charging port as well, and a couple other things, but I'll save that for another video. I'm so stoked and amazed at how well this came out. I mean, I'm in love with this. And now the form factor isn't as practical, especially for Game Boy Advance games, but it's still a lot of fun to play with. Makes for a great conversation piece, as well as a collector's item, and it just looks amazing. Everything works pretty well, and that sound coming from the speakers is nice. It does play pretty well with games without the triggers like Pac-Man, Dig Dug, Centipede, and the original Super Mario, and pretty much all original Game Boy games. Well, that's it on this build for now. If you like this, make sure to hit a thumbs up. If you want to continue watching more, make sure to check out my LEGO Game Boy Advance SP video up here. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, thank you all for watching.